Welcome to Scotch and a Beer with Officer Dan. We're into the 20-somethings and things are getting exciting. In the last episode, I was fresh off of becoming Danny George's spotter, kissing the man in public, and learning a ton from being on an actual Formula D team. There was a brief window in between me getting back from being Danny George's spotter where we grinded on the car to get it working again and then headed off to Top Drift round 2. Now I was going to do the motorcycle versus car drift battle 3 video at this point, but I'm waiting for Ernie to get back from South Africa so I can try to get some of the lost footage from him of that shoot, so that way I can make it a little more historically accurate and or awesome. The other good news I have about this video is that I have 2 people that I'll be interviewing. One of them I interviewed in the past, thinking forward to this. Another one I just interviewed this week. Strangely enough, both of them were interviewed about the same subject, so they will both be in today's Scotch and a Beer. Pretty excited about that. It's the first time. And on that note, a Scotch and a Beer. We're going to start off with the Barley Pop. This time it's going to be Boddington's Pub Ale. Now, I've never actually had one of these up until recently, and it's actually a pretty damn good beer. It also has some technology in it that's a little bit above what a Coors can would offer, and it has a kind of nitrogen capsule inside here that releases millions of tiny bubbles, giving it the perfect amount of head that is nice and creamy. And I'd seen these being poured at many a bar across the country, and I was always kind of enamored by it, even though it says something completely different on the actual bottle. What I see people do is this. God, I'm so horrible at this. Oh, I'm really horrible at this. Yep, definitely didn't do that right. Whew. Just gonna let that chill for a second because I'm just gonna make a mess. All right, I only spilled like an eighth of the can. You can hear the nitrogen capsule rattling around in there. One of the best parts about this beer is the head. The head tastes amazing. Oh, yeah, that's good. Since I have to do these every single week, and it's been getting exponentially more expensive to do so, I decided to be economical for once and bought a 3-pack of the Grangestone in smaller bottles so that I could sample them, and now I have 3 weeks worth of scotches to test with, saving me money in the end. This first one is going to be the Grangestone Highland Single Malt Bourbon Cask Finish, matured in traditional American oak casks and finished in casks that have previously held American bourbon whiskey. Smells like a candy store. Like when you walk into a candy store that actually like makes toffee and like stretches and pulls it. That's what this smells like to me. And it is immediately sweet to the taste buds, and as it sits, you can tell that it's not an older whiskey because it's a little bit more harsh. This is kind of more like a bourbon that's been aged a little bit longer than it normally is, but it's not quite like a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old single malt. It's still really, really good. You can taste the toffee. Like that is very, very strong with this one, is that toffee taste. I'm getting a little bit of peat, but not much. So it is just a tad bit of smoky, but overall it's pretty good. It's not my favorite, but hey, it's a scotch. I wanted to preface this episode by saying that I still wasn't 100% sure of what I wanted to do with my drifting life. If I wanted to do FD, I'd have to build a new car, I'd have to come up with a budget, I'd have to get sponsors on board, and I had none of the above. My current car couldn't even make it through an event without me ramping it off of something because something broke. Just wasn't working out for me so far. Plus, I had just gotten fired, so cash was on the low side of things. I left it up to the drift gods, and I just decided to run a season of Pro-Am on my lonesome and see how I could do with it. And per the previous episodes, not so well, it turns out. But what I did learn was a very important life lesson. I learned to live frugally. I feel like I need some chips or something. It's such a pub ale. Get it? Because it says it on there. It's pub ale. Anywho. Now, Albuquerque is not an expensive place to live. If you make anything over like 30 grand a year here, you're doing really well for yourself and you can afford the nicer things in life. It'd be like making 60 to 70K in any other cities that aren't like New York City or LA. That being said, I went from making around 75 grand a year down to making 275 bucks a week on unemployment. That unemployment would only last me 6 months, then it would be cut in half for another 6 months after that if I still couldn't find a job, which at this point I didn't want to. I had a little bit of savings, which was quickly being eaten up by all of my expenses. Now somehow, working that job at T-Mobile, I had no money left over. I was spending so much on other stuff, I just didn't save. I was an idiot. I had to make some changes. And these changes would actually stick with me to this day. So I'm actually really glad that I learned these lessons that I did back then. Hey, maybe this will be a new life lesson for some of you guys that are just starting out. Otherwise, if you're already dialed, good for you. What I did was I totaled up every single expense that I had had on average. So I went back like a year, I printed everything out onto a spreadsheet, and I know most accountants do this, but I didn't have an accountant because I was very poor at this point. So I did a monthly expenditure chart. All the stuff that stayed on that chart as reoccurring, I lined up and I prioritized. Holy shit, there were a lot of them. So I got all the vital stuff up to the top. Car insurance, renter's insurance, rent, gas, water, electric, cell phone, internet. The important things that I needed to actually function as a human being. And that became my minimum number. That is the number that I needed to hit to actually survive. Now, I didn't include food on this because I was actually eating ramen like 3 times a day at 69 cents a bag. So I wasn't concerned about food. Probably not the most healthy decision I've ever made, but it kept me alive. Now, I cut everything else off. Needless to say, I was spending over $2,000 a month on shit I didn't need. Stuff that I maybe thought that I needed, I actually did not need. So I cut all of that out. That's a nice, mellow, easygoing scotch. Now, those brass tacks would be covered by my unemployment. So everything that I needed to pay all of my bills was covered at $275 a week, which ended up working out perfect. I had 6 months to hustle here and there, sell some things here and there, and make money on the side enough to survive. I guess actually paying attention to what you're spending your money on is really kind of the lesson that I'm getting at here, because I wasn't. I was just like, send it, take it, I don't need money, I don't like money, whatever, I'm an idiot. And I still live that way to this day. All I have now as subscriptions is Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Spotify. That's it. Keep it simple, stupid. I also started ramping up Whiskey Garage at this point. I had a bunch of blank t-shirts, and I was increasing my online presence, trying to get web sales, and all of that stuff equaled everything else that I got to do, which kind of carried with me all the way through FD. Whiskey Garage allowed me to pay for diesel to go to events because I would sell shirts there, it would cover it, plus some to buy more shirts to make more shirts. Circular circles. So maybe that'll help some of you guys that are getting into drifting and want to maybe consider that as a career choice. I don't know why you would do that, but if you did, make sure that your expenses are in check before you go into this and not getting fired and forcing you to do this, because then you can actually save money. So now that I have living frugally down pat, it's time to move on to the car stuff. So after returning from Vegas Drift, where I'd ramped the car 4 feet in the air and smashed down back into the earth, the re-entry process had caused a lot more damage than I thought it was going to do. It turns out I had bent my front subframe as well as tweaked basically every suspension component on both sides of the car in the front. Bent a coil over, it was just bad news. It was a lot worse than I thought it was. But that's what happens when you ramp your car. So, lesson learned, don't do that. So we got the new front end fabbed up, but I still needed new lower control arms because I had bent those as well. We only had 4 days until it was time to leave for Top Drift, and I didn't have the money to buy a new set of LCAs and or overnight parts from Japan. So I called Jim and asked him for a huge favor to see if one of his guys could actually fab me up a set of lower control arms. He said, yeah, bring it on by, let's try to get it dialed in. And God, I love Jim, he is so amazing. So the guy having no experience with 240SXs whatsoever and or designing suspension components for 240SXs fabbed up a set from stuff we looked at on the internet, and it looked golden to me. He tacked everything together, we tested it out in the parking lot a little bit, everything seemed golden, and we took off for Top Drift. This time it was going to be Alan Aiken as a crew guy. We had Bubba Price, who was bringing his own car, so that was rad, getting a road trip across the country with those dudes. And then we brought Tim Walsh, whom I had mentioned in many previous videos. He was going out there to film a video with Jesse Wood, who was doing a summertime internship at USC, which we will get into later because that is awesome. Now, Tim was gracious enough to come over and kind of do a little bit of an interview with me about the whole experience going to Top Drift. Now, this Top Drift would be where we would meet Gina. Things got a little bit epic when we met Gina. What's up, Tim Walsh from the now defunct Automotive Digression?
Not much. Dan Brockett.
Ex-roommate of mine who was not shitty. 98.3% were. He is an amazing photographer. He's a really good dude. He traveled with us a bunch on a lot of our trips. And now he's here because he went with me to this round that we're going to be talking about today. Tim said he wanted something sweet. So this is going to be that. I'm going to give you a light pour since you're going to have to drive home.
Fair. And full disclosure, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not really a Scotch drinker, so Dan's kind of just holding my hand.
We're winging it.
Through this one.
But yeah, thanks for coming.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks for having me.
We're going to talk about some good stuff here. It's so good. Anyway, I digression. Too soon. Too soon. Tim, how did we meet?
So we met at Sandia Speedway. I had just recently moved out here to New Mexico from Reno, Nevada, where I had started shooting motorsports. So I'm walking around the pits one day, and you
like
pulled
a
up.
lost puppy.
Yes, no idea what I'm doing. And you pulled up in your gray coupe, which I thought was probably the cleanest 240 I'd ever seen, because I'm still, at this point, pretty sure that most of them, like, if it was one
Clapped
color,
out shit boxes.
like, yeah, like, you were doing big things if your car was one color.
Still true to this day.
You pulled up and you were just like, hey man, what's up? I was like, hey, so I want to like shoot some cars and some drifting and stuff, but I don't know where to start. And you're like, jump in. You gave me a tour of the track from the passenger seat of your car, and then literally just dropped me off in the middle of the track and just said, have fun.
All right, dude.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
we'll see you at the end of the day.
Yeah, the enduring, very nonchalant Officer Dan introduction happened then.
All right, so Casual Dan met Confused Tim, and magic happened. You traveled in the past at XDC with Jim Guthrie, and this was like our first time traveling as a, I'm going to say, poor group of drivers.
The poorest of the poor.
The poorest of the poor.
Yeah.
So you were staying with me. Jesse was kind of going to meet us there. He was out there for the summer doing a summer internship. So we were staying at a hotel called the EZ8, which means an easy 8 hours of sleep. We came to find out it was $32 a night, and it was worth every goddamn penny.
Yeah.
Give me your skinny on the EZ8 experience.
Well, first and foremost, I was really worried about our trucks and cars parked outside.
That's right. We loaded everything we had in the cars, tires, wheels, jack, tools, spares, into the hotel room with us.
The neighborhood was so sketch. Even after that exhausting road trip,
this is in Lancaster, California.
Yeah, Lancaster, California.
But like the outskirts of Lancaster on the other side.
It was bad. But yeah, I remember we were exhausted, but we were still like, no, we're going to wake up and everything is going to be stolen if we don't bring everything inside. So we packed that entire hotel room full of everything that was once in the truck, short of the cars themselves.
They were cleaning off mattresses. There were stacks of hundreds of mattresses. They were apparently getting rid of a bedbug epidemic. So that was key pointer number 2.
Yeah, we were first in after the
fresh out of the bedbugs. You know, we're just a trial period.
I forgot about that. Just stacks of mattresses. Oh, felt dirty before we even got in the room.
EZ8 kills it. So the next day we wake up and we go to practice. I have a bunch of trouble with the car. Weird. Kept breaking stuff. And Tim was just shooting pictures that day. Bubba crashed. It wasn't a good day for us New Mexico guys. Bubba told me that he could link Horse Thief Mile first try out, and I think I bet him $100, and I won.
We have GoPro.
Yeah, we got the GoPro footage of the bet.
I know there is an audio recording of that
bet. And I definitely won that bet because he did not link the course first try.
Nope.
At all.
Nope.
You didn't link it at all, Bubba. Sorry, buddy.
So what we're doing here is we're betting Bubba Price that he's going to complete Horse Thief Mile first time out on the track
for $40.
For $40. It's on the line. What do you say, Bubba?
Do I have to pay anything for this?
No.
It's just
You just have to fucking pull out the run.
Oh, I'm in.
I had a bad day. We went back to the EZ8.
Well, we were planning on unwinding in that glorious hot tub.
The one that said, please don't go into this if you've had diarrhea in the last 72 hours. That was a big sign.
Yeah, also very reassuring. So yeah, you, me, Bubba, and Alan, and I think
Tyler Seth Deal, and a guy, I can't remember his name. He was out there from a different party.
Chris. Well, I mean, in all fairness, because we're hanging out at this terrible Lancaster hot tub at a Sleazy 8 hotel and drinking some Barley Pops, and
we were tapping the Rockies.
Then we were joined by the, how do you even introduce her?
Past middle age, probably in menopause, African-American woman who was an ex-prostitute, ex-drug abuser, who had just gotten out of jail. She had no teeth, and we also learned that this hotel was a halfway house.
Halfway house with bedbugs.
With bedbugs. What a way to start your new life as a non-incarcerated person by getting bedbugs. Anyway, she was here, funded by the state.
Yeah.
Reintegrating into society, and she reintegrated right into our group.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, Gina, if you're still out there,
if you're watching this,
if you see this, like, we still love you. None of what we're about to say is meant to be
negative.
Yeah, so we met Gina, and Gina joined our group. Wanted to drink some beers with us.
We tossed her a couple of Barley Pops.
She sang some songs.
She yelled a lot.
She really liked Amazing Grace. Like, she sang it like 10 times.
Minimum.
But just little parts of it here and there, and just like trail off into...
It almost seemed like she was singing it to the tune of like the Star Spangled Banner, but it was Amazing Grace words.
Yes, that's right.
Which was, try that. It's a lot harder than it sounds, but she made it happen. And we were like, is she singing the Star Spangled Banner, but with the words from Amazing Grace? Anyway.
Things went south real quick, though.
They did.
I think she got maybe 1 or 2 beers deep with us, and then she kissed you.
The real Gina came out.
Yeah, Gina.
I was coerced into a kiss with Gina, which would play a lot into some online drama that would happen later. But I'll get into that shortly.
Oh, Gina. So
then her pimp came out.
Oh,
husband, dude in a walker. And he wasn't so happy with Gina hanging out with all these dudes in a hot tub feeding her Barley Pops.
It kept progressing, kept getting worse and worse, and it happened so fast. And then boobs were out.
Yeah, titties were floating on top of the water, and we were just like, all right, we're done here.
Yeah,
we're done here, Gina. We love you. We miss you. We're going to go back to our room.
I mean, really, though, wasn't she like the embodiment of the EZ8 hotel? Like,
yeah,
our
I mean, if the EZ8 could have a mascot, Gina would be the mascot for the EZ8.
Yes.
Highly recommend staying. 6 stars out of 5.
Yeah, request Gina, though.
Yeah, always request Gina.
Have a drink with her.
Or 6.
Listen to her sing, because
it's beautiful.
It will change you.
Anyway, thanks so much for coming, Tim. It was awesome having you. You're the best. Cheers.
Cheers,
We
buddy.
don't need to drink the rest of that in one sip. Just give it.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it in one, but I'll promise I'll do it.
All right. And onwards to either the end of this video or the story. I haven't determined it yet because this is like 2 episodes in the future. So big thanks to Tim for coming over and being my first guest on A Scotch and a Beer with Officer Dan. Appreciate it, buddy. You're one of the best. So that kind of covered our rendition of Top Drift Round 2, as well as Gina and staying in the Sleazy 8 motel. Plus, we stayed a couple of days afterwards to go hang out with Jesse at the place he was staying at USC, which happened to be a frat house as mentioned before. So I wanted to fill in the details of being at said frat house. It's exactly like how I imagined it to be. So like I said, we decided to stay a couple of extra days and enjoy California, staying and hanging out with Jesse, which is awesome. Always liked hanging out with Jesse. Always liked hanging out with Tim. And so we drove into USC. We parked my truck and open trailer at the time with the black drift car on it in Frat Row, which got lots and lots of looks from everybody. Now, like I said, Jesse was doing an internship at USC and he was staying and or had stayed at this frat house. So it was free lodging for us, which if it's free, it's for me. So we walk inside and Jesse gives us a tour of the place. Gigantic downstairs, lots of lounges, a huge kitchen. It had a freaking milk dispenser. There was a group of dudes playing League of Legends when we walked in, which was really, really awesome because I was playing League of Legends pretty heavily back then, so I knew everything that they were doing. So it was really cool to see a bunch of pop collar kids playing League of Legends inside of a frat house. So as he continued the tour, Jesse brought us upstairs, showed us our digs, which happened to be a closet that was filled to the brim with bunk beds. Awesome, I'm in, sign me up. They also had this porch that was out front on the 2nd story. So I went out as they're still talking inside the tiny closet of a bedroom that we were in, and I was giving her a big stretch, and I looked to the right. Now, to the right, we were kind of T-boned into a sorority house. So this building ran this way where the porch was, and the sorority ran this way. So we were kind of T-boned into that. The edge of the porch looked directly into a gigantic window in the sorority. Wasn't thinking much of it, like I said. I was just enjoying the nice California air. And as I was looking hard right, I noticed a girl walk in front of the window who then turned around and was completely topless. At this point, I'm kind of awestruck and I don't know what to do with my hands. So of course, I call all the guys out. I was like, dudes, get out here now. And they all came out and this girl, just titties, hanging out for the world to see. Didn't give a shit. Because they wouldn't have believed me if I would have been like, dude, I got onto the porch and there was titties and things were happening and then I don't know what, they wouldn't have believed me. So calling them all out, they all got to witness. It was right there. 10 minutes after we had arrived at a frat house, titties. It's like Animal House was real life and we were living in it. So as we were sitting all out front, she walked downstairs, fully dressed at this point, kind of looked up at us and waved and then got into a car and drove off. And we were just like, well, that really just happened. Cheers to the frat life that I never got to live. Anywho, I was like, is this even real life? I mean, they have a freaking milk dispenser. It was at this point that I had called another internet buddy of mine who happened to live in the area. His name is Robert Kochis. You may know him as Stay Crushing. He was the first person to have the Rocket Bunny kit on an FRS that spawned an entire SEMA, basically. So, good job, Robert. Anyway, Robert was kind enough to throw another interview my way. It just so happened that these two interviews crossed paths. So, as you can clearly see, there's now somebody sitting next to me.
Hi.
This is Stay Crushing, aka Robert Kochis. Kochis? Coaches?
Coaches.
Coaches.
Yeah, I know. I have a weird last name.
And anyway, my truck trailer, which was open, and my race car were parked across the street, and we had his car parked on the other side of the street. So it was a little bit ridiculous being on this road full of frat houses, and people are just like, what is going on? Why are there these race cars in our front yards? And these girls were tripping out over it, and my car didn't have any windows, so people were like peeking their heads in, and we're just sitting up on this balcony of this frat house drinking beer, watching people oogle over the cars. It was fantastic.
It was interesting. I mean, also on top of that, it was a USC frat row, which is in California a pretty iconic place for people to visit when they're in college. Like, that's the one spot where everyone wants to go to party because...
Yeah, and it makes sense. I can understand why at this point.
I mean, how big was that house?
That house was gigantic. I think it had like 15 or 16 rooms.
Yeah, I think it
had an attic. It had a basement. It had a milk dispenser. It had a cereal dispenser. It was all fully stocked.
I'm not really sure if I was on page with that. Like,
I'm okay with the milk dispenser, man. I was all into that back then. So I was like, oh my God, a freaking milk dispenser. I'd talked to Robert a bunch online. We'd flirted back and forth over the internet, and he came out with his FRS to this frat row, and we had a little miniature photo shoot with Jay Wood and Tim, which was awesome. Anyway, we all decided that it was time to go eat, so we went through this back alleyway and popped out into the ghetto. Now, the front of the frat house is manicured, green lawns, palm trees, beautiful white buildings, and then you go on the other side of that, and it is ghetto, like hard ghetto. So we go to this taco stand, have some of the best tostadas I've ever had in my life, and we decide to get some Barley Pops and head back up to the frat house for some fraternization. It was at this point that I met one of the most aggressive bums that I have ever come across in my young life. We go into the store and there's a bum kind of sitting by the counter, and I'm assuming he has a deal worked out with the kind cashier at the gas station to hustle folks. I don't know how or why, but he asked us for some spare change so he could buy some alcohol, and I was like, sorry dude, I don't have any cash. So this bum takes a bottle of alcohol, puts it down on the counter and says, well then put it on your card then. And I'm like, what? This has never happened to me before. I don't know how to react. Saying I don't have any cash on me is the go-to I don't want to give you any money line. That now was out the window, and the dude was physically putting a bottle of alcohol down and asking for me to pay for it with my card. I said, no, I'm not buying you alcohol. And he got all uppity. So we checked out and we left post haste. Shout out to the aggressive bum over there by USC campus. What the shit? And that was that. That was Top Drift Round 2 in a nutshell. So, the whole Gina thing. As we went over with Tim's interview, Gina was something else. And what happened was David Carey spun this into a narrative that I was cheating on Danny George, since at Atlanta I had kissed Danny George on the lips, and now he was fuming mad. So David Carey wrote this whole article about how I was cheating on him and how I needed to make reparations to make Danny happy, and it turned into this gigantic thing between me and Danny George. It was kind of awesome. So having kissed Gina, I was feeling a little bit awkward. We were also enamored with the GoPro's abilities to be underwater, which is why we had brought it into this hot tub in the first place. Highly recommended. Always stay at the EZ8 motel. Anyway, that was Top Drift Round 2's adventures, antics, Gina, a frat house, some boobies. It was an insane trip, and I'm so glad that I got to share that with Jesse and Tim. That just puts the icing on the cake. And that is where I'm going to end this video. Thanks again for watching Scotch and a Beer with Officer Dan. I'm going to be back next time talking about Motorcycle versus Car Drift Battle 3. I'm going to try to get all that extra footage from Ernie, maybe have Ernie on to talk about how much of a shit show that filming was, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Officer Dan, out.